We all know that the world is going through an existential crisis. There's a threat of nuclear Armageddon, bioweapons, very insidious. We have no idea what's going on. And in the hands of madmen, we are under a huge threat here, like a Damocles sword um, hovering over us. And then, of course, climate emergencies that are rampant now, weather changes. We know that part of it is man-made, human-made. Part of it is also nature. But at the same time, we also know it's happening, it's devastating. But we have polluted this earth, we have polluted the sky, we have polluted the waters. So all of those things are also happening, creating this crisis for us. And the other big crisis is the fact that so many people in the world now are going into the, if you look at them from the Blackfoot Maslow hierarchy, their basic needs for safety, security, food, shelter, clothing, they're not being met now. And vile behavior results when those basic needs are not met. And in a world where there is so much of abundance, to have these disparities is a huge cause for this threat. So all of these things are going on. So for me, I have been inquiring into this area since I was in my teens in terms of the root causes of why we are where we are at. And I was fortunate enough to have some teachings that was inculcated in me in terms of the life is suffering, life is impermanent and uncertain. But there was also a path that was taught to me in terms of understanding where that suffering comes from through Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Pathway, where the key in the Noble Eightfold Pathway, the middle path, is to understand, to put things in perspective, to really see what's going on by lifting the veil. And when we lift the veil, and I think it's all of our personal responsibility for us who have technology, who have access to information, to be informed of what's really going on, and to really look at all kinds of diverse views and to make up our own minds by thinking critically. So I think that's why I'm saying this about this personal responsibility from a mindful, becoming aware, paying attention to what's going on. So that's on one side. So as a 12-year-old, I was taught this, but also as a 12-year-old, I was just beginning to be taught the sciences. I went to two Catholic schools, St. Sylvester's College in Kandy, Sri Lanka, and then St. Anthony's College, and where I was now being taught the STEM theories, science, technology, English, languages, to really look at the world from a black and white point of view, from a machine universe. And in also inculcating in us that there is a definitive process, there's an absolutist process that's there in the universe, that we have 1 and 1 equals 2, the chemical equations, in learning physics, the Newtonian physics of speed versus time. So that was being inculcated in me. On the other hand, while I was inquiring into this impermanent, uncertain world, that life that I'm facing. So I was living with these two truths, so to speak, and then moved to Canada as a 14-year-old, and then the whole world changed because I came from a very close to nature life in Kandy, Sri Lanka. We didn't even have a telephone in our home, but we had a really, I would say, idyllic life when I look back. And to come to Canada was just mind-boggling to see the material life, the abundance of things. You walk into a supermarket and you see so much of choice. All of that enamored me. The big cars, I was into cars, huge roads, big buildings. Everything was big and everything was material. And there was this certain sense that we didn't really worry about spirituality and religion or any of those existential questions or metaphysical questions, but it was very much a material upbringing. So there, the only way I kept my mindfulness practice going was because my father was a member of the Buddhist Publication Society, and we used to get a monthly subscription of books, and there were little books called Bodhi Leaves that would have topics like emotion, anger, and I delve into those and written by very wise human beings. And another book that I encountered there, a bigger book called Heart of Buddhist Meditation by Venerable Nana Ponika, who I knew, he was my father's friend who lived in Kandy. So all of those things kept going parallel to my material machine-like education. So then came also, I got involved in a martial arts practice where mindfulness and meditation was an integral part of it. But then when I started college, I registered for at Seneca College mechanical engineering program, which was collaborating with Ontario Hydro, and the program was called the Nuclear Option. So in effect, I was being trained to become a nuclear plant operator because Canada has a big nuclear program for power. So while in this program, I was introduced to this topic of quantum physics. Now, I heard of the name quantum physics before, and I knew that there's some mystery to it, but I didn't quite know what it was. And Dr. Peter Canix, who taught us this, said words like uncertainty principle, particles and waves. Now you see, now you don't. He also said things like the observer will influence an experiment. So I was sitting there thinking, what, hang on a minute, what happened to the Newtonian, everything is a certain kind of physics, and just laid bare open. And I had a meeting with Dr. Canix afterwards, and he started mentioning names like Niels Bohr, Werner Heisenberg, Schrodinger's cat story. And he said, go in and get books and research. And I did, and everything went over my head because it was so confusing what was happening. But all I knew was there's something going on here about this whole certainty machine-like universe framework. And then I was introduced to David Bohm, to realize David Bohm and the Indian mystic Krishnamurti had long conversations and books written about that, and I delved into those while I was in college, and they were very confusing, but all I know was there was some fascinating explorations that were being had between Eastern mysticism, Eastern philosophies, and now this modern science. So then I was also introduced to a book called The Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra. He was amazing because he then was the next generation to go to Berkeley to do a PhD in physics. People like Gregory Bateson, Stan Grof, and all of them were there, and they were getting into psychedelics and the mind-bending experiments into looking at the world in different ways. So it was fascinating to read his book Tao of Physics, which confused me in many ways, but also basically he brought on the dance of Shiva, and I was just intrigued by this whole introducing dance of Shiva in terms of the destroyer and the creator story. So the ebb and flow of all of this. So I delved into his books. So his second book, Turning Point, written later, was much easier to fathom because he, for the layperson. And then he wrote a book called Uncommon Wisdom about all the influences he had from the various sages and scientists and people who influenced his thinking. Fascinating book. And then he later wrote books like Web of Life, just confirming that we are an interconnected people. I cannot separate myself from this earth, from this universe, in the way that the Cartesian duality happens. So Descartes basically said, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. So then separated the thinking person, the thinking entity, the thinking process versus matter, versus the body. And that this thinking process can manipulate and control everything else that's out there in the environment. And what Capra was, CAPRA was proposing was that no, everything is interconnected. We cannot separate the mind and the body. So that went really, really well with my whole practice of the meditation, because when I was taught to meditate, the monk basically said, look, just imagine where this breath is coming from. It's coming from the tree, it's coming from this earth, it's coming from the waters, the oceans, and imagine where your breath is going out. So already I knew of this whole notion of that I am not separate from this earth. So all of these confusion was now coming to a head by this learning. So Fritjof Capra has been carrying on teaching this, and then in more recently he has now put out some what he calls some truths about systems thinking. So he's one of the proponents of systems thinking, the whole notion of that we are a web of connections in one system. So in terms of very similar to the Buddhist practice of cause and effect, karma, or codependent co-arising, because if I do anything at all, there's going to be a reaction somewhere else. So that understanding is not there in the machine universe where we have separated our minds from our bodies. So we do things, we create technologies, we develop technologies over the last 100 years. So I talked about the existential crisis, about the nuclear threats and all of the other things that are going on, the introduction of technologies right now, a younger generation who is suffering with these technologies. They may have access to all of the information and fun and games, but what's happening to them, their psyches. So all of that is happening because we develop technologies without thinking of consequences. So that disconnect is there because our mind thinks just about the utility of the technology. Now it's greed, ill will, and delusion about with these technologies. So it has come, and we have, I think, crossed the line of that now. Greed has really taken us over. The corporate greed, the corporate political nexus, all of that is emblematic of this whole thinking of the separation between the mind and the body. So Capra talks about four things that are inherent in life in this systems process. He says life is inherently networked, and we know that everything is networked with each other. When I breathe in and my nourishment, all of this comes from this earth and the surroundings, and I also am interconnected in relationships with my family, my parents, my siblings, my children, my spouse, and all the other relationships I have. That interconnection is what keeps us going as a person, right? So we can't separate ourselves. So that is inherent even in the smallest of the cells. Those interconnections are, that's the universal law, inherent interconnection. So next he says life is inherently regenerative. So when you think about ourselves too, when we go to sleep, we regenerate ourselves, even though we have a lifetime. Within that lifetime for us to thrive. So I came here for a run. I am regenerating myself by breathing this oxygen. I run through this forest, and that regeneration happens. So life is inherently regenerative, and we know that. And then the other one is life is inherently intelligent. So there's an inherent intelligence within us. With each cell, even a single cell amoeba has that intelligence for survival. And then when it comes to another level of thriving, it then increases that spectrum of how we can then, that innate intelligence helps us to survive, grow, and also live amongst each other. And a part of that intelligence is also to realize some of the truths of our empathy towards one another. We need each other in that network, and intelligence gives us that. So say the Zulus saying of Ubuntu, I see you, you see me, I'm here because of you, you're here because of you, comes through that innate intelligence that we know that we need each other. But we have also, because of the conditioning that has come in the last 150 years in the consumerist world, we have separated ourselves, and we don't listen to that intelligence which comes to us as an innate sense of wisdom of how everything is interconnected too. And the other one is life is inherently creative. And when we think about it, it's those inflection points of the chaos and order that we're constantly creating, co-creating with each other to live a better life, to discover new things. All of that is inherent in us. But what is important for us to think about is that creativity, all of that regeneration has limitations too within this human and all the sentient beings and this universe. And that's what I believe, and the reason I'm going much longer, and my kids are going to say, oh, but you've gone way over 4 minutes, but I thought it's important to spend a bit of time to talk about this, because we can take individual action, we can take personal responsibility for ourselves, because we most often think that I'm helpless. No, I can help. I can help by the way I live. I can help by the way I make decisions. If I have technology, if I have access to a cell phone, I can influence others, not to cause a revolution, but to create conversations, to awaken ourselves to this oneness with nature, truth. that we have ignored so much at our peril. So all I'm saying is, advocating is for us to take some time for ourselves, get away from the technology, find that quiet time, go find a space where you can quiet your mind and focus on your breath and empty your mind from all the thoughts, all the fears about the past, about the regrets about the past, fears about the future, and find yourself in the present moment, and then do a vipassana type of inquiry by going inward and really understanding the nature of who I am and who I am within the relationship of this earth and of this universe and of with each other. With that awareness and awareness of those relationships, we're humbled away from the hubris that we have, the arrogance that we have, that technology can fix everything, that we can engineer our way through all the problems we have, is a pipe dream, I believe. You realize that wisdom when you quiet your mind, and then that's what I wanted to spend a little bit of time sharing with you today. Well, be well, be happy. It's a beautiful day in Ottawa. It's a fall day, and I'm coming from a place called Timber Mill area of Ottawa.